this morning who wish to provide comments related to the items considered or who wish to be notified of the decisions, they can send an email to planning@sdgcounties.ca. When the time comes for public comments or questions and you wish to speak, please raise your hand if you are attending in person. You can just pull up a chair right here on the side next to the presentation desk and use the microphone to address yourself. We ask that you do state your name and address when it's your turn to speak. If you're joining virtually, you can press the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen. You will then be admitted to the visual part of the meeting and will be seen and heard by the panel and those watching live. We will try to answer requests to speak in the order they are received. Again, if you request to speak and your turn arrives, we ask that you begin by stating your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kimberly. So we will, are there any disclosure of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof? Seeing none, I'd like to introduce Lindsay Parisian, the senior planner, and she'll further explain how the meeting will proceed and provide an overview of the matters being considered. Welcome, Lindsay.
Thank you, Warden McDonald. So this public meeting is a forum for the public and council to receive information that pertains to the proposed amendments to the SDG official plan through OPA or official plan amendment number 24 and official plan amendment number 25, as well as voice any questions, comments, or concerns regarding the amendments. This meeting is being held pursuant to Section 17 and Section 21, subsection 1 of the Planning Act. As previously stated, anyone wishing to receive further notice about the amendments to the SDG official plan can send an email to planning@sdgcounties.ca.
Okay, thank you. So we will move on to 3.1, the official plan amendment number 24. So I'll ask for the presentation from staff.
All right, thank you. So good morning, everyone. My name is Lindsay Parisian. I'm the senior planner at the SDG Planning Services. This morning, I have a presentation that I prepared for you regarding OPA number 24, which is in regards to the rural consent policies. So this slide is just a quick overview of what I'll be discussing with you this morning. First, we'll go through the purpose, location, and basis of OP number 24, the progress to date. We'll also review the current OP policies in regards to consent policies, as well as some of the proposed changes. Following this, we'll look at next steps and then open it up for any questions that anyone may have at this time. So the purpose of this OPA number 24 is to amend the rural consent policies and land division criteria in an effort to promote development throughout our counties. The amendments apply to all lands within the corporate boundaries of SDG. This is a staff-initiated official plan amendment, which has been reviewed and revised by staff. And really what's involved is proposed changes to the actual text of the official plan. So looking at our progress to date, at the February 20th County Council meeting, staff were given direction to proceed with this OPA. Proposed amendments were then reviewed by SDG Planners Group. Meeting was held on April 10th of this year. After this meeting, local councils were then updated to understand the proposed amendments, and that they were actually further tailored based on the initial proposal in order to meet their local needs. Since then, OPA 24 was circulated back to the group for final comments, as well as external agencies, and notice of this public meeting was advertised on July 26th, and which brings us to today, August 14th. So looking at OPA number 24, the proposed amendment would be as follows, and really it pertains to section 3.12.13.3, so that's our land division criteria and plans of subdivision and looking at consents. And it's really, the proposed amendment is really focusing on two subsections, so looking at the number of consents that are permitted. What we propose is resetting of the dates of which a lot would be considered to be in existence, as well as looking at adding some additional criteria requirements. And we've also amended the agricultural resource lands and are looking to permit up to one surplus residence dwelling with some additional criteria as well. But we'll look at these amendments later in my presentation with greater detail. So currently our official plan, this is just a screenshot of what the current policies and how it reads. As you notice, there are 3 dates in which a lot of existence is reviewed against, and it's specific to each local township. As you notice, some of the dates date back as far as 1980, so it's been a good 44 years since that date has been reset. Some are a little bit more up to date. And what you'll also notice in this slide is that currently we do permit up to 2 consents per legally established lot. So this is an example of what we're proposing and how it would actually be reflected in the actual official plan document. So looking at the number of consents, the majority of each township has decided to reset their date in which a lot of existence would be considered to January 1st of this year. With the exception of North Dundas, they're looking to maintain their current date, and that is as a result of external pressures and their local context in which they face with being in proximity to the city of Ottawa as well as Kemptville. As you notice, we are maintaining the permission of up to 2 consents per legally established lot, but in some cases we are requiring some additional studies and requirements based on the existing site conditions, and which I will go through a little bit later in terms of what those additional requirements and criteria may be. This is the other section that will be that we are proposing to amend, where it speaks to up to 1 resident surplus residence dwelling per farm consolidation. And what we've also done is added some additional criteria. So, for example, if an applicant were to come forward wanting to sever off their surplus residence dwelling on their farm, that building itself would have to be in existence for at least 10 years. And the lot in which they're looking to configure can't have a negative impact on the functionality or viability of the farm operations. And we're also looking at minimum size requirements as well. So this slide is really just a table that summarizes all the proposed changes within each of the townships. As you'll notice, townships of North Stormont, South Stormont, South Glengarry, and South Dundas are resetting their date to January 1st of this year, permitting up to 2 severances, and they're also looking to permit up to 1 surplus residence dwelling per severance with the additional criteria. North Glengarry will also be doing the same, or has also endorsed the same amendments, but are considering or have endorsed the permission of 1 additional lot over and above the 2, but of course subject to additional criteria, which I'll speak to in the next slide. Township of North Dundas will maintain their current date, which is August 18th of 2006. They will permit up to 2 severances and are also going to permit 1 surplus residence dwelling with the additional criteria. As mentioned, so these are some of the additional criteria and studies that we are also included in with OP 824. Some additional criteria being considered would be to ensure that there's no conflict with the abutting land uses, there's no increased demand on municipal services, urban development is not a concern if the lot that's being created, and this is for the lot that would be in addition to the 2 that's permitted as of right. The first 2 would have to be developed, so if they're not developed, as in they can't be sitting vacant for that individual to have an additional consent, they have to be fully built out. Some additional studies and requirements that we are looking to also require is the need for a hydrogeological study, a terrain analysis, or staff may also request a copy of the existing drilled well records, and this is to ensure water quality and quantity is viable for that site. So some of the comments that we received to date, all of this has been reviewed by our SDG planners group. They were supported by township planning staff and as well as endorsed by local councils, and resolutions of support were provided. The amendment, as you see today, has been tailored in order to meet each township's needs, which is based on their local context, and it is consistent with our provincial policy statement, section 1152, as it would be deemed considered locally appropriate. So at this time, staff are recommending that OPA 24 be approved adopted as proposed at the next county council meeting. Given that there are no concerns following this meeting, we will look to incorporate any final changes and comments and feedback. Then we will finalize the bylaw as well as the OPA report and hope to bring forward this bylaw at the August 26th county council meeting. If passed, there is of course the 20-day appeal period. If there are no appeals that are filed within that time frame, OPA 24 will then become in effect, and then staff will then proceed with updating the actual OP document. So that concludes my presentation, and where McDonald, I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, thank you, Lindsay, for your presentation. At this point,
It only took 3 tries. Okay. So good morning to Warden McDonald, members of council, and staff, members of council. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to share my thoughts on the Official Plan Amendment 24 this morning. I realize that you have all talked about this at your own council table, but I hope that you receive my comments with an open mind this morning. I've lived on 30 acres of beautiful woodland on Beaverbrook Road just outside of Martintown since 1991. I'm sorry, I forgot to say I'm Joyce Gravel and I live at Beaverbrook Road in Martintown. So that makes 33 years that I've lived there. When I first moved there, we were the first house on the left from Chapel Road, which is 1 kilometer away. Today in 2024, we are the 7th house in that same 1 kilometer, soon to be the 9th or 10th if this amendment takes place today. For those of you who know me as an economic development professional, you will know that I am not opposed to growth. We always need new people, businesses, etc. But what I am opposed to is growth at any cost. I'm asking you today to think about the other side of the decision that you are making, the long-term residents and taxpayers who have lived and enjoyed a quality of life in our townships, in rural areas, who don't want the lands along our rural roads to be chopped up and become suburbs. We can all move to Canada for that. In the current SDG official plan under the Natural Heritage Features and Areas section 5.5, 5.5.4 states that the intention of this plan is to conserve woodland. Schedule B2 identifies these significant woodlands, and Beaverbrook Road on either side of me is identified on this schedule. Rural residential uses will be permitted in woodlands. A scoped environmental impact study may be required as a condition of development, but at least 4 severances have occurred in the past 2 to 3 years, and not one of these studies has been fulfilled on this significant woodland. There was a scoped environmental impact study as a condition of a 20-acre severance on the property to my immediate east, but it was not upheld, and the property owner was allowed to do a self-assessment with no ground truthing involved, in spite of known to me butternut trees, owls, and turtles. I tell you all of this because this is my concern, that we're forging ahead with these additional severances without considering the less desirable consequences. There's a lot of talk about what we are considering or going to do, but nothing on paper for you to review or utilize in this decision that you're making today, or not today, but in the future. The official plan provides estimated and projected population growth numbers and housing units. In SDG, the population is projected to grow by 2,424 people between 2016 and 2031. And the housing units by 2,280, which seems like a decent supply given that the 2,424 new people won't all need 1 house each. I realize these are not more recent numbers, but if I was sitting where you are, that's what I'd be asking. What are the numbers today to justify this increase in severances and lots for sale across our region? Perhaps in some townships it's more than others, but we don't know, or at least I don't know. Do you? The SDG Growth Management Study, which I wasn't able to find a full copy of before today's meeting to see if there were more helpful numbers that I could have quoted, mentions that only 10% of growth will take place in the rural areas, with the majority of units being created in the villages and hamlets. So why the need for 2 additional lots severances per rural property? In South Glengarry's case, the report provided to their council stated that a review of our existing lots has been completed. No number was provided, but also no suggestion of how many future lots can be created with this official plan amendment from these existing lots. So without knowing how many we might need and or how many this amendment will create, perhaps we only need to allow 1 additional severance per property rather than 2, or maybe we need to compromise on the date. Rather than January 1st, 2024, perhaps the February 2018 date is sufficient. There's no real data to support either that I can see. The report also mentions a housing shortage. Again, I'd love to have some actual numbers to support that statement before deciding to cut up our rural countryside with lots that might just sit empty for years. What else are we doing to assess with this suggested housing shortage? Are we looking at additional infill or lot creation within villages, hamlets, urban settlement areas, or is it just the rural people who have to provide the solution? It's also stated that consent policies will be reviewed and future recommendations through another official plan amendment will be presented in the future to update the consent criteria to ensure that technical studies information are provided to support the proposed consent. I guess from my earlier comments about Beaverbrook Road, I hope this is true. My past experience hasn't been very positive, with a stipulated condition of severance not being applied. To summarize, I guess I just don't understand what is the rush to chop up our rural countryside into smaller lots without much more supporting data, planning information, and time to fully understand what this will mean to those of us who will be truly affected by it, as well as the significant woodlands that may be lost, which we really can't afford to lose anymore. I've been told that many, many people are asking for additional lots. I'm guessing that those many, many people are builders or speculators or people that want to sever off a lot to make money, not the people on the rural road who don't want to do that, whose quality of life is about to be seriously compromised. So thank you very much for your time and consideration this morning.
Thank you, Warden Brian McGillis, 11 Myers Road, St. Andrews West. I have a question. First of all, I want to thank you for your presentation. It's very well done. It was just for clarification, is this going to open it up for more severances? Yes, outside of agriculture properties, and that would allow for more access regress, more driveways, things like that on county roads.
Thank you for the question. So the current policies, both on the environmental planning side that was mentioned earlier, and the county roads policies, are not proposed to change. There are some policies that Lindsay had mentioned regarding the for hydrogeological and terrain analysis. I know at some of the councils we had also discussed whether the lot size should also be looked at increasing a bit from 1 acre minimum to maybe 1.5 or 2, just for the hydrogeological study. But currently, the county road policies, based on our discussion with the department, at least as part of this, are not proposed to change. However, in the future, I know there have been discussions whether that should be a separate review, and but no formal direction on that. So under this policy, the county road policies would still be the same, the 300-meter setback between the entrances.
Thank you. The reason why I asked that question is that all municipal roads are not able to have any, sorry, I got an echo. Somebody's got their mic on. Okay. No? All municipal roads are not able to have any more housing builds because of they're full. They're full. There's no extra lots for sale. There's no extra lots allowed to be able to have that extra, severance or whatever because of the lack of properties. We are in a housing crisis, as you mentioned, Joyce. I think that we should be looking at making our county roads accessible for severances, so that I know that, or either go back to one driveway. There was one individual that approached myself, and they said, they're asking, I have a piece of property, it's there, it's not bush, it's not forest over, it's land that is able to be built on, and he requested to build two houses on it and use the existing driveway that he has now. And he was told no because of 2018 bylaw that was passed at the counties. And I want to see the counties look into this and change the policy where they're allowed to use the one driveway. They're actually, the lot's already there. We need houses. We don't have the ability to build them on all roads. My road where I live, you can't build extra houses because there's no room for it. So we have to start looking at using county property, county roads, so that we can have access to the road system, especially when it's coming near like stop signs and that, where you're not affecting the, the change in the speed. So that's what I'd like to see the county go back and look at making the differences there for the counties, for the county roads, and allowing people to have the opportunity to build and use the same driveway if they need to. And
thank you, Councillor McGillis. What I'd suggest is at the next county council meeting when this is being considered is, so far it's not been part of the policy. We've talked to our transportation department and they're satisfied with the current policies, but when this is considered, we could also get direction to review those entrance policies as well. I think the challenge is doing the entrance policies. It's not just for new lots, it's for existing lots and affects everywhere in the counties, but certainly if we get direction from council, even if it's an amendment to the motion at the next meeting, something like that, we could certainly look at that. But so far, just from talking to the department, they're satisfied based on the current policies, and we're not opening it up at this time.
So I want things that are directly on OPA 24. I'll just mention that in September, we'll be having a committee of the whole meeting once Ben returns to discuss exactly that, entrances and lots on county roads. So let's try and keep this on. Yes. Okay, are there any other further comments from the public? Was it just one for this one?
Unless there's anyone
Anybody online? No? Okay, thank you. So upon consideration of the comments today by Joyce made at this meeting, council will consider the bylaw, I believe, at the next county council meeting.
Yes, thank you, Warden. We'll take some of the feedback we heard and comments, consult with some of our colleagues at the local municipalities as well if there's any changes or any proposals, and then the plan would be to consider this at the next county council meeting on August 26th.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to official plan amendment number 25, and I believe, Lindsay, you'll be presenting.
Okay, thank you, Warden McDonald. So hello, everyone. This morning, I will also be presenting OPA number 25 for you, which is in regards to the boundary adjustments and housekeeping initiatives with our official plan. So similar to our last presentation, this is just a quick overview of what I'll be addressing in this presentation. We'll go over the purpose, progress to date. We'll review some of the proposed amendments related to OPA 25, and also we will take an opportunity to review the actual schedules that have been drafted, which will actually demonstrate and show exactly which settlement areas are being adjusted and what that may look like. Then we'll look at next steps and finish with any opportunities for to ask questions. So the purpose of this amendment is to amend the settlement area boundaries to either remove or add lands. Township planning and county staff have identified areas to be included as part of OPA number 25. And I will mention that some of them are also as a result of housekeeping initiatives, so may have some previous planning approvals that have occurred throughout the year. The amendments will apply to lands which are identified on the draft schedules, which we will review in greater detail later in this presentation. Some areas are looking at physical changes to the actual boundary itself. Some are properties within the boundary that are being redesignated. So for example, properties may be redesignated to either residential, commercial, or employment land use districts, and these will ultimately be reflected on the OP land use schedules, if approved. So looking at a progress to date, June 17th County Council meetings, staff were given direction to proceed with OP number 25. Since then, township planning staff as well as county staff have had meetings and reviewed any of the proposed boundary adjustments that they would like to see as part of this initiative. Since then, some of the draft schedules that we will review later were created as part of this official plan and are posted online. Formally, OPA number 25 was circulated to the SDG planners group as well as external agencies for review and commentary. As mentioned previously, the public meeting notice was advertised on July 26th, and which brings us to today's public meeting on August 14th. So OPA number 25, as mentioned, is looking at some boundary adjustments as well as housekeeping initiatives. So the official plan amendment will include some land swaps, some additions and removals of certain settlement areas, and as well as housekeeping initiatives that we'll look at in greater detail. This slide is just a quick summary of the various townships and the settlement areas that are proposing to be adjusted as part of OPA number 25. And I will actually take this opportunity to look at the schedules and go through them for you. So here's a list of, sorry, I do want to mention that these schedules are posted online, so anybody who's looking to review it on their own time may do so on this SDG website. So looking at the Township of North Dundas, so I will just expand the bookmarked area. We're looking at Hallville. So you'll see in the legend here that the area that's highlighted in green is the current settlement area boundary that's in our official plan. The area that we were being proposed to make that line adjustment is highlighted in red. So that's here. And then in the legend, you'll also notice that the proposed area that's highlighted in yellow is additional area that we're looking to add to the settlement area. So in this case, that's what Hallville is being proposed. Harmony, similar. You have the current boundary green, area added in red. Area being added is proposed to go to a residential land use district. South Mountain, site specific at this time to be redesignated for residential land uses. Winchester is a little bit more involved. Again, you have your current boundary, proposed boundary in red, and areas being added to residential land uses. South Dundas, Morrisburg. So this one is a little bit, there was a planning rationale that was provided by the proponent. They're looking to have multiple land use designations within the area that they'd like to have added within the urban settlement boundary, so that's that red area. They would like to have some areas added to commercial, residential, and employment. This is another area within South Dundas, looking to add lands to our employment district. Iroquois is looking, sorry, did you want to? Iroquois is also being added for residential land use purposes. I do want to mention that some of these, or as I mentioned before, some of them do have formal planning rationales and justification that support these proposals. Williamsburg, here you'll see that some areas actually being removed, so that's the area that's highlighted in the darker purple. So that boundary adjustment will be removed, so this is more of a land swap in the case of Williamsburg. Dixon's Corner, again, another land swap, just recognizing where the what land uses are currently in place and wanting to reflect that appropriately in the schedules, and also recognizing too property owners that would like to develop their properties and those that have made a formal request to have their lands removed because they don't have any plans to develop their lands at this time. Removal, addition, boundary adjustments, North Stormont. North Stormont is another removal of area and addition. Oh, sorry.
And I just spoke with the owners before the meeting, and that line where the open spaces would be adjusted slightly just to match what their plans are for the property. But it's to add open space and then residential along County Road 12.
Moose Creek, this one is actually contained within the current settlement area boundary. It's just one property that's looking to be redesignated for residential land uses. South Stormont. Again, you'll see there's multiple things happening in Long Sault with boundary adjustments, so areas being added for residential land use purposes and also employment land use purposes at this time. Ingleside, this is the property that I had mentioned earlier with one of the owners wanting to have their properties removed from the urban settlement boundary, so that's being taken out and the areas being added over here. So again, another land swap with multiple designations that are being considered. Amherst Corner being added in this case for the north, and this is to accommodate a future plan of subdivision. Another residential property being added to the boundary. South Glengarry. These are, for South Glengarry, a lot of the properties are more focused on the employment lands. This one is proposed as going to rural district in this case. Lancaster, these are reflecting some previous approvals that are being are reflected as housekeeping initiatives at this time. And this is to reflect the current land uses and how they're currently being used. Another employment lands. More employment lands being redesignated. Main Road District, Summerstown Station, addition of employment lands. And that's what we are considering at this point in time, so I will go back to my presentation. And I do want to mention that the initial proposal has been scoped based on what was initially being considered at the time, and this is just as a result of some comments and feedback that we received from the Ministry of Municipal Housing and Affairs.
For example, we had some that were in Finch and in Maxville that, because they were prime agricultural lands, the ministry said, let's wait on this and do this a bit later. And since there weren't any specific proposals for those properties, then we will come back to council with a second amendment.
Yes, so just to continue with our presentation, so in discussions with local township staff and the ministry, OPA, it has been reviewed and supported by township planning staff. We are proposing the boundary adjustments as you saw in those schedules. And as Peter mentioned, additional changes may come at a later time with some additional feedback and justification that has been requested. But the properties that you do see or that are being considered today are consistent with the provincial policy statements regarding the settlement areas, in particular sections 1136 and 1139, which is really focusing on areas that, which allows municipalities to permit adjustments of settlement areas outside of a comprehensive review. So at this time, staff are recommending that OPA 25 as proposed be adopted at the next county council meeting. However, we do have a meeting currently scheduled with the Ministry of Municipal Housing and Affairs as well as OMAFRA, and this has been scheduled prior to the August 26th county council meeting, so this may have an impact on that timeline, on the anticipated timeline. However, given that all is well and there are no major concerns, we will continue to review the amendment, finalize any comments and feedback that we do receive from today's meeting and from that meeting that's currently scheduled. If all goes well, we are looking to bring forward the bylaw at the August 26th County Council meeting. If passed, there is a 20-day appeal period, and if no appeals are filed, their OPA 25 will become in effect, and staff will then work to update the document and land use schedules. So this concludes my presentation, and I will turn it back to you, Warren McDonald.
Okay, thank you again for your presentation, and I'll be inviting people up to speak to OPA 25. Again, I'll just hear that anybody that's here in the public to raise their hand, and if you're virtually, members of the public can turn their video and raise their hand, and Todd will let me know. So I'll ask you to please state your name and your address again. So I'm asking if there are any people that wish to speak to OPA 25 at this point. Go ahead. Yep. Welcome, Calvin.
Keep hitting buttons, as you say. Thank you, Warden McDonald, for the opportunity to speak. It's Calvin Poole from the Township of North Dundas. I'm the Director of Development Services. As you may be aware, the official plan is 7 years old. When we worked on it originally, it was adopted 6 years ago. A lot's changed since then. Our villages and our hamlets have changed. We've had an intense development in North Dundas, more than we expected, and we need to adjust some of our boundaries, and that's why we have so many changes in our municipality. We're happy to see the lands being added. It will allow phases 4 and 5 of the Wellings project to proceed. This is a significant senior-oriented development. It's 438 units, and we're trying to get to phase 4 and 5 and get it built. They're anxious to see this amendment get adopted and move forward so they can proceed with their development. This has slowed it down, waiting for this to go forward. We are disappointed, myself as a professional planner, that some of the other proposed lands that were to be added to the settlement areas have been removed. These have developers eager to proceed. We're looking forward to phase 2 of this project to move those areas forward. I have development proposals, people trying to develop on these lands, bring new housing in. They're attached to existing settlement areas. We want these to proceed. So I urge council in the future when this comes forward to seriously consider some of these amendments. We want to get more housing in proper developed areas, not scattered development, but intense in our settlement areas. So we look forward to phase 2 of this project. This phase at least gets us started for some of the immediate developments, but we're looking forward to phase 2.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Any questions from members of staff?
No, I was just going to add, we definitely agree in terms of the rest of the settlement areas. There were some that we pulled out just with discussions with the ministry, but some of these were the more immediate needs that had that justification. So we'll work with the Township of North Dundas and the ministry to get those other projects coming forward at a future public meeting, for sure.
Okay, great. Just say that Mayor Fraser took me on a tour of Wellings and about a month ago, and I was pretty impressed. So it'd be nice to see that continue to grow. Okay, are there any further? Okay, Allison.
Thank you. So representing the Raisin Region Conservation today on the planning side of things, and supportive of the work that staff are doing on the settlement areas and understanding how important these adjustments are for the villages and towns that we live in, both for employment lands and also residential lands. Just wanted to make the comment that we've reviewed a number of the properties, and what we're looking for is any kinds of natural hazards that may be a barrier to development in the future, and just wanting to make sure that the lands that get added can be reasonably used for what the proposal is. So we have noted some things like unstable soils, organic soils, and floodplains on the property. So we're planning to send those comments into to your office by the deadline that you've set. And if there's any desire to discuss those in depth, we're obviously available to do so. So we'll be providing those on behalf of Raisin, and I believe South Nation will also be sending in some comments as well. So thank you for the opportunity to review the proposal.
Okay, thank you, Allison. Any other further? Nobody online? Anybody else here that would like to speak to this? Go ahead.
And we're also available afterwards. We have the maps here to speak with anyone that wants to discuss their property.
Sure, sounds good. Okay, if there is no one else, just move to adjournment. So again, I'll just say that we'll take the comments that we got today, and thank you for your comments, and County Council will consider those when we are considering this bylaw. So I will ask for an adjournment if there are no further comments from the public meeting is concluded. So thank you everyone for joining us online and here in council chambers. And again, as Peter said, Lindsay and Peter are here to speak if there are any questions. So thank you everyone for joining us.